Hello, everyone. This is Nanette Kennedy with Humanities Team in the Evolution Revolution, and we are reading Neale Donald Walsch's New Revelations, A Conversation with God. And we are going to begin on chapter 24, which I believe is page 272, but Linda can correct me if I'm not correct on that.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Okay. All right. Well, Linda, take it away.
So we are starting at the beginning of this chapter, even though we had read fairly into it earlier, because it's introducing a different way of thinking of the body and the soul, and so it's good for review. We decided, and this is Neale speaking. I know what is meant by that. I know that as beings in the universe, we are more than a body. No, you are not more than a body. You are not your body at all. Your body is something you have. It is not something that you are. Who you are is limitless and without end. I understand. I understand that you're saying that I am what I call my soul. This is the essence of who I am. Yet even if I accept that as a spiritual truth, what does it have to do with the problems of the world? A great deal, by which I will demonstrate to you presently. In order for me to do so, we shall have to take a short but intense journey into the esoteric. And it may seem, while we are on this journey, that this conversation has gotten very much out of touch with reality. In truth, it will be touching reality in a very deep way. So you may have to have a little patience here and trust that as far out as we may get in just a bit with this next part of the new revelation, I'm going to circle around and bring this all back to the matter that this conversation was designed to address. Namely, what is wrong with your world and what can you do about it? Are you ready for a little diversion? Yes, I can deal with that. But first, tell me how the statement, "you are not your body," can be called a new revelation. Particularly, practically every religion in the world has taught some version of that. Well, you're right. It has been taught in some form or another by virtually every organized religion that speaks of an afterlife. The problem is that it has been taught incompletely. What is new in the present revelation is that it goes further than traditional teachings. Remember that I said that the new spirituality will not be a complete rejection of the old, but rather will expand upon the old. It will eliminate from the old what clearly no longer serves you and bring new and deeper understanding to that which does serve you. It will retain the best of your ancient wisdoms. And so, some of what you find here, you will have heard before. Yet now, we are going one step further. Now, we are moving one level deeper. Most religions have taught you that you are more than a body. The message here is that you are not your body at all. You are the essence of that which breathes life into your body. This is the key. This is the core. This is the central truth around which every other truth that humans live must now resolve if you do not wish to experience perpetually the cycle of violence, destruction, and killing that has plagued your planet for thousands of years. You are not your body. Who you are is limitless and without end. This is the key. This is the core. All of the other new revelations gather meaning and increase in force when this revelation is understood. This is the base truth, the prime number, the first cause. Everything else has new meaning when this meaning becomes clear. The building of your newer world starts here. The foundation of the new spirituality rests here. You are not your body. Who you are is limitless and without end. May I ask again, what does this have to do with the world's present predicament? Everything. Because the fact that you think you are your body is what has caused and allowed the human race to do all that it has done to itself. So now, let us seek to understand the meaning and the implication of the 13 words of the 8th new revelation. The words themselves mean exactly what they say. You are not the conglomeration of bones and muscle and tissue and internal systems that you call your body. That is not who you are. Your body is yours, but it is not you. It is something that you are using. It is a tool. It is a device. It is a mechanism that responds and reacts in particular ways under particular influences and when subjected to particular stimuli. This mechanism can be hurt or damaged or destroyed, but you cannot. This tool can be rendered completely inoperable, but you cannot. This device can cease to function, but you cannot. The basic life principle of functionality express itself eternally in, as, and through you. There are those who believe that the body is that which holds you, which houses the essence of you. This is the thought that the body houses the life essence that is called the soul. That is not correct. It is the soul that houses the body. Your soul does not live within your body. It is the other way around. Your body lives within the force field that you call your soul. It is housed within the energy configuration, within the localized expression of universal spirit that is the essence of who you are. This force field, this radiating, pulsating energy package that surrounds your body, is sometimes thought of by you as the aura. It is more than that, much more than what you imagine the aura to be. But that is nevertheless good imagery for your earliest venture into understanding, because it presents you with a picture that you can hold in your mind. The part of you that some of you think of as your soul is the energy of life itself, localized and concentrated at a particular point on what you would call the space-time continuum. This life energy vibrates and shimmers and pulsates and glows around every physical object in the universe. Depending on the frequency of its vibration, this energy may sometimes be seen. It can also produce other effects, such as heat. Some people call this glow the light, the eternal flame, the source, the soul, or by other names that suit their particular poetry. It is in fact the prime essence, the base substance, the core material of all things. This light is who you are. In your misunderstanding, you have thought that this light radiates from all physical objects. In fact, The process is exactly the reverse. This light radiates into all physical objects and thus creates them. The energy field that you call this light, or the soul, envelops the physical object it has created and extends outward from that object into eternity. That is, the energy never ends. There is no place where your energy field stops and another energy field begins. This means that there is no place where your soul ends and another begins. It is like the air in your house. In your home, there are separate rooms, yet there is only one air. The air in one room is not separate from the air in another, which you quickly discover when you smell that bread baking in the kitchen. There is no place where the living room air ends and the kitchen air begins. What is true is that the farther you move away from your kitchen, the less you can sense the portion of all the air everywhere that is there in the kitchen. Yet your dog can smell that bread from outside the house. That is because the air that surrounds the house, that envelops the house, is not in any way separate from the house, from the air within it. This is my analogy to help you understand. And have I not said, in my kingdom there are many mansions? The force field that is your soul becomes thin and expanded the further it extends from its localized source. But it never disappears completely, nor ceases to be. Instead, it mixes and merges with other fields, forming other localized concentrations, and creating a complex interweaving pattern, extending infinitely. We are talking here about a force field without borders. We are describing a soul that never ends. This is, in fact, what you are. You are an energy that never ends in time or space. I've never heard the soul described quite like that before. I keep having the experience here of hearing life explained in a way that makes it seem as if I'm really hearing about it for the first time. That is why these are called the new revelations. Not because the information is new, but because the presentation is. For many people, this information will be hearable for the first time, which makes it new. But now let me ask, if my soul goes on forever, and my neighbor's soul goes on forever, and every soul on earth and in the universe goes on forever, and if there is no place where one soul ends and another begins, and they all mix and meld and blend, then you're right. You're right. Go ahead. You're on top of it. You're right at the truth. Just say it. Then there is no individual soul, and every soul is just one soul, locally and individually expressed. That is exactly right. Then that one soul must be the soul of God, manifesting itself as all that is. That is exactly true. And that is what traditional exclusivist religions do not teach. If organized religions taught this truth, they could never also teach that any one person is better than another, or that any one soul is more pleasing to God than another, or that any one path is the only path to divinity. They could never teach that some souls go to heaven while others are condemned to go to hell. It is the teaching of their separatist philosophies and their exclusivist theologies that make some organized religions not only merely inaccurate, but dangerous. Yet new spirituality can change all that. Yes, it can. It can present a new point of view, one that is not exclusivist, elitist, or separatist. It can invite people to seriously consider, for the first time in centuries, some new theological ideas. It can offer for exploration and discussion some new revelations. The new spirituality will open minds to larger concepts than present theologies embrace, to grander ideas than present theologies consider, and to greater opportunities for individual experience and expression than present theologies allow. Such is the idea that there is, in fact, only one force field, that there is only one energy, that this is the energy of life itself, and that it is the energy that some people call God. Yes, now you have it. This energy has what you would call, in your terms, intelligence. It is at once the repository and the source of all knowledge, of all awareness, of all data and information and understanding and experience. It is in the all in all, the Alpha and the Omega, the great Am, not Am, which you have heard described in much of your sacred literature. You are this energy, and this energy is you. And there is no separation between you. You are one with everything, and everything. Somebody needs to go on mute, please. Okay, thank you. You are one with everything, and everything is one with you, for everything is comprised of this energy. This means that you are one with everything, everyone else in the world, not in a theoretical sense, but in a very literal and specific sense. There is no one, no human being anywhere of whom you are not a part, an intrinsic and intimate part. What this means in practical terms is that what is good for another is good for you, and what is not good for another is not good for you. It means that what you do for another, you do for you, and what you fail to do for another, you fail to do for you. This is the truth, and if human beings lived this way, it would have a remarkable impact on the life that human beings are collectively creating. Earlier, you asked whether this spiritual exploration could have practical implications for the world today. And I tell you this, living this way would change the world. The simple awareness that you are all one with God and one with each other, the creation of behavioral codes and agreements reflecting that awareness would shift the political, economic, and spiritual reality on Earth in ways that the teachings of your present day exclusivist religions can never do. This is why, if you wish to change your world as you say that you do, you are invited to now create a new spirituality based on new revelations. For your old exclusivist religions and your elitist, separatist theologies no longer serve you. Not only do your biggest, most powerful, organized religions teach you that you are separate from each other, They also teach you that you are not worthy of God. They teach you that you are shameful, guilty creatures, that you were born in sin and do not deserve to be the dust under God's feet. They rob you of your self-esteem. They teach you not to be too proud of yourself and of your talents and accomplishments. The glory of you is not to be contemplated or announced, but only your sinful nature. You are not to go to God smiling with wonderment of your own magnificence, but begging for mercy for your countless transgressions. Yet people who are robbed of self-esteem rob others of theirs. People who do not love themselves cannot love others. People who see themselves as unworthy see others as unworthy. The core message of the most organized religions is not joy, innocence, and self-celebration, but fear, guilt, and self-denial. Well, Reverend Robert H. Schuller, the American Christian minister who founded the famous Crystal Cathedral in Garden Grove, California, said 20 years ago in his book, Self-Esteem, The New Reformation, that what is needed is a second reformation within the church to move away from its message of fear and guilt, retribution, and damnation toward a theology of self-esteem. The church, he flatly declared, is failing at the deepest level to generate within human beings that quality of personality that can result in the kinds of persons that would make our world a safe and sane society. Dr. Schuller went on to suggest that sincere Christians and church persons can find a theological functioning launching point of universal agreement if they can agree on the universal right and uncompromising need of every person to be treated with great respect simply because he or she is a human being. This extraordinary minister also declared, as a Christian theologian and churchman within the Reformed tradition, I must believe that it is possible for the church to exist even though it may be in serious error in substance, strategy, style, or spirit. But he said ultimately, theologians must have their international, universal, transcreedal, transcultural, transracial standard. Reverend Schuller was profoundly astute in his observations and incredibly courageous in making them public. I hope he is proud of himself. I suggest that such an international, universal, transcreedal, transcultural, transracial, transracial standard for theology is the statement, we are all one. Ours is not a better way. Ours is merely another way. This can be the gospel of new spirituality. It can be a kind of spirituality that gives people back to themselves. That is the work I'm inviting you to do in the world. I'm inviting you to give people back to themselves. People are returned to themselves when they are allowed to think their own highest thought about themselves and to announce it. You give people back to themselves when you announce it for them. Do not let a moment go by in which you have an opportunity to tell someone how magnificent they are. Do not let an opportunity pass in which you may offer praise. Give people this gift of self-esteem, and you will have given them a gift that many cannot find a way to give themselves. Yet when they find themselves through you and return it to their own most glorious vision and their own grandest idea of who they really are, they are lost no more, for you have returned them to themselves. Once they were lost, but now they are found. To change people's behavior, change people's ideas about themselves. To change people's ideas about themselves, change their beliefs and life. their beliefs about life and God. If you think that you were born in sin, are a sinner now, and will be a sinner always, how are you most likely to act? Yet if you believe that you are one with God, that you walk in step with the divine, then, how then will you behave? I tell you this, you are an angel. You are an angel for whom someone is waiting today. That is one of the most wonderful things that has ever been said to me. I only wish it could be true. It is true. Yet if you cannot believe it is true, that may be because you have been told you are an unworthy sinner. I agree with you, and I'm not the only human being who does. As one who believes in a loving, cleansing, forgiving God, says Rabbi Harold S. Kushner, and as one who advocates religion as a cure for the afflictions to the soul, I am embarrassed by the use of religion to induce guilt rather than to cure it, and by the number of people I meet, of all faiths, who tell me that they are constantly burdened by feelings of guilt and inadequacy because they made the mistake of taking religion seriously when they were children. In his book, How Good Do We Have to Be, Rabbi Kushner also says, it is so sad to meet people who think of themselves as deeply religious and to discover that what they think of as religion is, in fact, a childish fear of losing God's love if they ever do anything against his will. Rabbi Kushner has spoken with a voice that is courageous and clear and true. Now, you have a choice between beliefs. I say you are my angel. You say you are but a lowly, groveling sinner. Which belief do you think better serves you? Which belief do you think better serves humankind? End of chapter.
Thank you, Linda. Does anybody want to start the conversation?
I can do.
Okay.
I love this message. It's so beautiful and it's so true and it's so profound. And it takes me back to my childhood when I had these experiences as a kid, and I thought that was how life was. And I think we all have some glimpse of this somehow in our lives, at least if we are going in inwardly. I think this is it's a new revelation, and it is so profoundly important to listen, to take it in to the heart and melt together with this message. That's my reflections and feelings when I'm listening to this. I'm very grateful that I'm here with you. That was just. Thank you.
Thank you. I also think that this chapter could be read once a day. Just because it's jam-packed.
I find the information about the soul and the body and the relationship between the two as really fascinating, because, and I know that I've spoken about this in the past with this group, I'm a big believer that the soul can abandon the body under certain circumstances. And so I've been meditating this week on how to marry those two ideas together, because we have many examples of it. So there's examples in the world when people are in a coma. A lot of times the soul or the spirit is separated from the body, and there are lots of anecdotal stories about people who are in comas, and family members go to, like, let's say there was one story I remember. It was a car accident, and there was something, I don't remember what the possession was of the person that was in the coma, but the people went to where the car accident was, and they found this possession. It was something that meant a lot to the person. And when they brought that possession to the hospital, to the person, to the body, the body came out of the coma. And so, the assumption is that the spirit or the soul was with the possession, like had separated, that there was some kind of a separation that occurred. And then there are other stories about, people dropping dead out of fright. And the body's mechanism, like when you get frightened, what do? You take in a big breath. That's what happens when we get frightened. And it's some kind of mechanism that exists between the soul and the body to keep them connected, because under extreme fright, the body will cease to be, and the soul will go, back into source. So just knowing that it's the soul holding the body, not the body holding the soul, really kind of clears up a lot of those stories in a way that I find fascinating. Over.
I would like to add something more, as I forgot. First, Nanette, I think what you said, that it should be read every day. It's it's a kind of meditation, profound meditation. So I suggest that to read it every day for a while. But I remember as a kid also that I asked so many times, who am I who has a body and has a soul? What is that? Who am I if I have a soul? Who am I? And I got into this field where I felt, I am the source of life, which is everything else. And I couldn't really get the description of the soul. I think he has done this very good here. He described it it confirms it comes back to my questions as a kid, and it has followed me all life. And also that we can read this and we can talk about it without saying, oh, you are so special, you think you are something more. It's here we can just surrender to this and discuss it from what is said to us. So yeah, I did that too. Thank you.
I don't remember what book I read this in, but it was at least 20 years ago. And the author was saying or suggesting that the soul and the body are indeed connected, but can be disconnected. But the example this author used is when people get nightmares and they're woken suddenly by a nightmare. It's like a alarm system for the body that says you're too deep of a sleep. And so the nightmare is what wakes the person up, because the soul is looking out for the body. Now, like I said, I can't remember where I read that, but I thought it was very interesting. Over.
Well, it does sort of bring up a whole can of worms when you start talking about dreaming and what the dreams mean now. I mean, I really do feel as if this completely shifts that whole conversation.
Yep.
May I share something, please?
Sure.
I was in the catacombs in Alexandria in 1974. And when I went to sleep the night after I'd been there, I could not believe the intense fear. I still remember it. I cannot describe it as anything other than some kind of black possession, like someone had picked me up, picked up my body and soul up, and gripped them in a vice-like darkness. The fear, the palpitations, like my body is remembering it and still scared 40 some years later. So that is what was evoked when Nanette just mentioned the nightmares, and when Linda spoke of the soul leaving the body. I think now, in the context of this chapter and what we've read, is that this was darkness possessing my soul and trying to wrest it away. That's what I feel. I appreciate Linda's response because of Lindapedia.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, there is no darkness, right? Because if everything is divinity, there is no darkness.
Then what accounts for the intense fear, Linda, the palpitations, and now, I've had goosebumps describing it to you.
So I think that is the body, the physical form, the 3D housing. I don't think it's your soul or any other soul. Everything's you gotta. I mean, it's so complicated. So everything's energy, and everything's vibrating at a frequency. And then now think about the frequency, the scale of David Hawkins, right? So the frequency of anger and guilt and all of those are very low frequency vibrations, very low energetic vibrations. They're still ultimately divinity, right? Because there isn't anything that exists that isn't a function of divinity. But at that frequency, it's a very low vibration. And that's, I think, the only way that I can describe that is that that our bodies are a fairly low frequency to start with, right? Because they're in physical form. And so I think that when that's happening, I don't know, but my suspicion would be is if you were to go into prayer or self-love or compassion, that kind of an exercise, as you start to have those feelings would dissipate. And that's hard to do because at the moment when you're caught up in those feelings, it's very hard to remember that there's something else happening because it's more of a sensation. Does that make any sense at all?
I'll repeat back to you what I think you said, or what makes sense to me, is that the body of this entity was vibrating at a level low enough to resound with whatever was in the catacombs from millennia ago. And so it simply intensified the lowest frequency, which is fear, guilt, shame. Does that capture your...
Yeah, I think so. Because remember, Neil says your soul has your body. It's not that your body has your soul. And that makes sense to me from my own personal experience, because I have the memory of agreeing to come into form. And so basically, like, I never really thought of it this way, but basically, for myself, I was given a body, right? It was like, because boy, some of this is all making sense now in a way it's never made sense to me before. So prior to coming into and being and attaching into my mother's body, I'm aware of the decisions to come. And so at that point, obviously, when you're not in form, you have to be given a form to come into. So that makes sense. It's not that the body started first. The body was created for the soul to have. So it's the soul's body that I was given. I was given that body inside of my mother. And the only thing that makes me different is that I remember those 9 months of being in there with that body, right? And boy, this is all making so much more sense. And so then as I came in when I was born, on the day I was born, I was aware that they were taking me out of my mother. And so it's our body. This is my body, and we each have our own body. We were each given a body to use while we're here. And so, like what I was saying earlier, when somebody dies out of like instant fright and they separate, basically in that instant, what's happening from my understanding is that the soul is saying, I'm done with this body. I'm done with this physical experience. I'm not going to stay here in this form anymore. I'm leaving the body behind and I'm going back to source. Really meditating on this concept that the soul has the body. It's the soul's body. Yeah, you're right, Nanette. We could read this every day for a while, this chapter. I don't know, Shabana, did that help?
Yes. I have only awe and admiration for you in knowing consciously that you were being removed from your mother's body. That is remarkable, because I am now entering my 3rd decade of a spiritual training, and slow and steady wins the race just doesn't apply, because it's slower than a snail's pace. And I've been berating myself at how slow I am. But this chapter is giving me encouragement and hope, because alignment, instead of, which is the fusion of so-called light and dark, as you've mentioned, Linda, there is no such thing. It's a matter of judgment that, and of course, these exclusionist othering religions that force us to recognize that. And suddenly it's becoming abundantly clear to me, because of today's discussion and the content of this chapter, that repentance is essentially transforming and transmuting values, intergenerational values, that the mindset and attitude of my parents and siblings have, because of my personal commitment to re-examine my own beliefs. Like, this has been transmuted by moi. And for the first time, I'm marveling at my own magnificence, because my children are spectacular. I always told them that I couldn't care less what you achieve in life. Go on welfare. I don't care what you do. The one thing I want you to do is be a blessing, be a good person, period. And that was not the MO of my family. For the generations before me, it was always make the money, get the status. End of story. Who cares whether you're nice or not, because you can push people around once you're rich and famous. So shut up and get rich and famous. That's all. That was the function of their lives. So for me to slog away for myself is the big blessing that I didn't know that I was, by changing myself, changing myriad others in my family and thereby the world, if that makes sense. That I'm not as slow and stupid as I thought. And I'm proud of that.
Can I also say something about that? What your discussion makes my heart smile. And it reminds me, actually, I go here. It reminds me when my daughter got her, was told that she wouldn't survive. Now it's 16 years since she died. But I remember she lived with me the last 4 months, as I told before. But she woke up, the first night, she woke up and said, she had a nightmare. And she said, how is it to wake up from one nightmare to an even bigger nightmare that she should die and leave her three kids? They were small. That was devastating for her. But time went on, and because she stayed with me because she wanted to meditate with me and so go deep. And she came into a state where she transformed this. and no nightmares. And then in the end, she was just sitting there saying, now I have left the bindings with my husband and kids. And she was sitting in another field. And then they came in, and I could see she was present, but there was not personal connections. She was just there in a beautiful way. And that's how she left. So she managed to come into that field. And she said she was not at all afraid of dying. She was in that field. So I think nightmares is something that, for her, it was a way of waking up and preparing for coming into the oneness field. And I'm so proud of, or so happy that I could be with her and follow her, because she taught me more about dying than anyone else has done, the process. But you reminded me when you said this about nightmares. It was horrible nightmares she had the first week or 2 weeks maybe. And she realized that, wake up to an even stronger nightmare. What is this? And then everything came into peace. And she was in that field. She was not separated when she died. She was just there. And this book, this right is what you read, Linda, is giving me the understanding what she went through. And she had studied, not maybe this book because it was not yet written at that time, I think, but she has written all these Conversation with God books. So, yeah, she said, the only thing that is important is for me to be one with the divine, one with God. No matter if I'm going to be healed or if I'm going to leave, that is the only state that I want to be in. So thanks for your discussion. It helps me to understand even deeper and be even more grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. We've only got a couple of minutes. Shabana, do you want to do the closing?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Lord God, we're one, you know it, and we've got the theory. Now grant us the grace that Bima's daughter Sophia had in consciously, deliberately transmuting her fear, which was shown in nightmares, into absolute acceptance, which led to detachment. We love our Mother Earth. We love our families. We love our bodies and our material assets. We love to whine and bitch. Help us to consciously turn our attention to what is true, and that is oneness and absolute acceptance that we are magnificent, we are blessed, and that we are magnificently blessed. Amen. Okay.
Thank you, Shavana.
Thank you, Ivana.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
And thanks, everybody. And I hope those of you that were looking for them, the 3 previous weeks are up on the Evolution Revolution page. So if you want to find those, there. And I will try to get this one done quickly.
Thank you very much, Nanette. How are you feeling?
A little better every day.
Well, you're looking good.
Thank you.
Now that you've combed my hair, your hair, I didn't notice it before, but
Yeah. Now that I mentioned it. All right, everybody. I love you all. And we will see you next week.
no one noticed Nanette.
Only me. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Love you.
Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone.